Yuto, the Phantom Avenger from the Xyz dimension, and wielder of the Xyz dimension dragon. Despite his short-lived existence, once he merged with Yuya, entrusting him with his Dark Rebellion Xyz dragon, they had unwittingly begun to reawaken Zark each time Yuya was placed under stress. Once Yuto managed to communicate with Yuya, it was revealed that the two could even swap with each other to duel in each other's place. Along with his Xyz dragon, Yuto also reminded Yuya to always use dueling to try to bring joy to the lives of others, even if they didn't always succeed in doing so together. It's been almost 9 years since the end of Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5, and Yuto's fan-favorite Phantom Knights archetype has seen some support over the years. So today, let's take a look and see which cards Yuto would play if he were still dueling today. Yuto played a deck of Phantom Knights monsters, so we're going to start off with the level 3 Phantom Knights of Silent Boots, Torn Scales, Ancient Cloak, Ragged Gloves, and Stained Greaves. If the player controls a Phantom Knights monster, Silent Boots can be special summoned from the hand. Silent Boots can be banished from the grave to add a Phantom Knight spell or trap from the deck to the hand. Torn Scales can discard a card to send a Phantom Knights card from the deck to the grave. If another Phantom Knight is banished from the grave while Torn Scales is there, it can summon itself, but it'll get banished when it leaves the field. In attack position, Ancient Cloak can target a dark monster, then change to defense mode, then boost that monster by 800 attack and defense until the end of the opponent's turn. Ancient Cloak can be banished from the grave to search any Phantom Knights card. A Dark Xyz monster summoned using Ragged Gloves as an overlay unit from the field gains 1000 attack points. Ragged Gloves can be banished from the grave to send any Phantom Knights card from the deck to the grave. If a Phantom Knight is summoned to the player's field, Stained Greaves can summon itself from the hand, then increase its level by 1. Stained Greaves can be banished from the grave to summon a Phantom Knights from the hand, then increase that monster's level by 1. And that brings us to the level 4 Phantom Knights of Fragile Armor, Cloven Helm, and Raider's Wing, which is always treated as both a Phantom Knights and a Raid Raptor card for some interesting cross support between Yuto and his best friend Shea Obsidian. If a Phantom Knight is destroyed, Fragile Armor can summon itself from the hand. Fragile Armor can be banished from the grave to send a Phantom Knight from the hand to the grave to draw 1 card. Once per turn, if a Phantom Knight is sent to the grave while Cloven Helm is on the field, it gains 500 attack points. Cloven Helm can be banished from the grave to search a Phantom Knights card at the end of the turn. If Raider's Wing is in the hand or grave, it can summon itself by detaching a material from a Dark Xyz monster the player controls, but it gets banished when it leaves the field. The Dark Xyz monster summoned using Raider's Wing as material can't be targeted with card effects by the opponent. For a couple pieces of generic support, we have Kagemucha Knight and Armageddon Knight. If the player normal summons a level 3 monster, Kagemucha Knight can special summon itself from the hand. When Armageddon Knight is summoned, it can send a dark monster from the deck to the grave. Another archetype that's popular to splash into Phantom Knights is the Burning Abyss archetype. The two created a popular strategy known as PK Fire, which was extremely powerful in its heyday. So we're going to start off with 4 Malabranches of the Burning Abyss for the main deck: Skarm, Graf, Farfa, and Seer. Importantly, these monsters don't like to play nice with others, as if the player controls a non-Burning Abyss monster, they blow themselves up automatically. Each Malabranch of the Burning Abyss has 2 different listed effects, and they can only use one of their effects each turn, and only once that turn. The first effect is the same across the 4, where if the player controls no spells or traps, they can be special summoned from the hand. Their second effect is the one that activates if they're sent to the grave at all, granting a different reward. During the end phase of a turn that Skarm was sent to the grave, it can add a level 3 Dark Fiend from the deck to the hand. If Graf is sent to the grave, it can summon a Burning Abyss monster from the deck. If Farfa is sent to the grave, it can banish a monster on the field until the end phase. And if Seer is sent to the grave, it can target and special summon another Burning Abyss monster from the grave. Taking a quick peek at the back row, we'll also be adding in Fire Lake of the Burning Abyss, which can send 2 Burning Abyss monsters from the field to the grave to destroy up to 3 targets on the field. Back to the monsters, we have one more Burning Abyss support piece in Tour Guide from the Underworld. When she's normal summoned, she can summon a level 3 Fiend from the hand or deck with its effects negated. Notably, this will stop whatever Burning Abyss monster she summons from immediately blowing itself up, but won't stop their graveyard effects. To round out the main deck monsters, we have some pendulums for Yuto. The Phantom Knights have no native pendulums yet, but these will definitely do for the time being. We have Black Fang Magician, Timebreaker Magician, Shansheng Magician, and Xiangke Magician. Black Fang is always treated as an Xyz Dragon card, and if it's destroyed in battle, it can summon a Dark Spellcaster from the grave. Its pendulum effect allows it to target an opponent's face-up monster and have its attack for the turn, then Black Fang destroys itself. Timebreaker's pendulum effect protects the player's first pendulum monster that would be destroyed by a card effect that turn, but only once each turn. When it's pendulum summoned from the hand and no other cards are pendulum summoned, Timebreaker can double its original attack points. Once per turn, Timebreaker can target another monster on the field to banish both that target and itself until the player's next standby phase. The opponent takes no battle damage from players involving Shansheng. Once per turn, Shansheng can target another face-up monster the player controls to make its attack become equal to that monster's current attack for the turn. Shansheng's pendulum effect can, once per turn, target a face-up Xyz monster and a level 5 or higher monster than the player's control to make that Xyz monster's rank become equal to the other monster's level. If the player controls more cards than their opponent, Shansheng's pendulum scale becomes 4. Once per turn while in the pendulum zone, Xiangke can target a face-up Xyz the player controls to allow it to use its rank as a level when Xyz summoning that turn. Once per either player's turn as a monster, Xiangke can target a light monster on the field to negate its effects for the turn. Lastly, borrowing from Yuya, since all 4 U-boys have merged together as one, we can add an Odd Eyes Phantom Dragon. If its pendulum summoned and deals battle damage, it can burn the opponent for damage equal to the number of Odd Eyes cards in the player's pendulum zone times 1200. Once per turn as a pendulum scale, if an attack is declared involving the player's face-up monster and the opponent's other monster while the player has an Odd Eyes card in their other pendulum zone, it can make that monster gain 1200 attack points until the end of the battle phase. Supporting this deck's pendulum cards, we have Pendulum Call and Pendulum Xyz. Pendulum Call discards a card to add 2 Pendulum Magicians from the deck to the hand, and until the end of the opponent's turn, Pendulum Call will protect them from card effect destruction. Pendulum Call cannot be activated if a Magician Pendulum effect has already been activated that turn. Pendulum Xyz targets 2 cards in the player's pendulum zones, summons them, negates their effects, and immediately performs an Xyz summon where the level of one of them can be treated as being the same as the level of the other, making it quite versatile. For some Phantom Knight spells, we have Spear, as well as Phantom Knight's Rank Up Magic Launch and Force. Phantom Knight's Spear burns the opponent for 500 damage each time they target a Phantom Knight monster on the field with a card effect. If a dark monster the player controls would be destroyed by the opponent, Spear can be banished from the grave instead. The Phantom Knight's Rank Up Magic Launch can be activated during any main phase. It targets a Dark Xyz with no materials and ranks it up into another Dark Xyz that's 1 rank higher. During the main phase, Launch can be banished from the grave to attach a Phantom Knight monster from the hand to a Dark Xyz monster the player controls as an overlay unit. Phantom Knight's Rank Up Magic Force can also be activated during any main phase. It banishes 1 or more dark monsters from the grave, then targets a Dark Xyz monster the player controls to rank it up into a Phantom Knight, Raid Raptor, or Xyz Dragon monster whose rank equals the targeted monsters plus the number of monsters banished from the grave. The player's extra deck is locked to only summoning Xyz monsters for the rest of the turn after that. Now on to the real stars of this deck, we have Yuto's Phantom Knight trap cards. First, we have Phantom Knight's Wing. It targets a face-up monster and boosts its attack by 500, also allowing that monster to avoid destruction once that turn. Wing can be banished from the grave to summon another Phantom Knight monster from the grave, but that monster gets banished when it leaves the field. These next few Phantom Knights have an effect that can summon themselves, so we'll cover those by level. All Phantom Knight traps that summon themselves as Dark Warrior monsters, and are not still treated as traps while in the monster zone. For the level 2 Phantom Knight traps, we have Lost Vambrace and Wrong Magnet Ring. Lost Vambrace targets a monster on the field. If that monster is still on the field at resolution, the player's Phantom Knights can't be destroyed in battle, and that target loses 600 attack, and its level becomes 2 for the turn. After that, Lost Vambrace summons itself as a level 2 normal monster with 600 attack and 0 defense. Wrong Magnet Ring can negate an opponent's declared attack, then summons itself as an effect monster with 0 attack and defense, with a quick effect that can send itself and a face-up Phantom Knight's card from the field to the grave to draw 2 cards. On to level 3, we have the Phantom Knights of Tomb Shield, which summons itself as a normal monster with 0 attack and defense. During the player's turn except the turn it was sent to the grave, Tomb Shield can be banished from the grave to negate the effects of an opponent's face-up trap for the turn. For level 4, we have the Phantom Knights of Dark Gauntlets, Shadow Veil, and Shade Brigandine. Upon activation, Dark Gauntlet sends a Phantom Knight spell or trap from the deck to the grave. When the opponent declares a direct attack while the player controls no cards, Dark Gauntlets can summon itself from the grave as an effect monster with 300 attack and 600 defense, but banish it when it leaves the field. If it's summoned by its own effect, Dark Gauntlets gains 300 defense for each Phantom Knight spell or trap in the player's grave. Shadow Veil targets and boosts one of the player's face-up monsters by 300 attack and defense. When the opponent declares a direct attack while Shadow Veil is in the grave, it can summon itself as a normal monster with 0 attack and 300 defense, but banish itself when it leaves the field. Shade Brigandine can be activated during the turn it was set if the player has no traps in their grave. It summons itself in defense mode as a normal monster with 0 attack and 300 defense. The Phantom Knights of Mist Claws can target a banished Phantom Knight monster and add it to the hand. When the opponent declares a direct attack, Mist Claws can target a level 4 or lower Phantom Knight monster in the grave, summon that monster, then summon itself from the grave as a normal monster with the same original level, but banish it when it leaves the field. Up next, we have 3 Phantom Knights continuous traps: Fogblade, Sword, and Raider's Unbreakable Mine, which is always treated as a Phantom Knights and Raid Raptor card. Either of the first 2 can be banished from the grave to summon a Phantom Knight from the grave but banish it when it leaves the field. Fogblade activates by targeting an effect monster and negates that monster's effects. It also prevents that monster from attacking, but also prevents it from being targeted for attacks. If the target leaves the field, destroy Fogblade. Sword targets a face-up monster to boost it by 800 attack, and if the monster would be destroyed, Sword can be destroyed instead. If the target leaves the field, destroy Sword. If the player conducts an Xyz summoned using a Dark Xyz monster as a material, Raider's Unbreakable Mind can target and destroy a card on the field. If Unbreakable Mind is destroyed while in the face-up back row, it can set a rank-up magic directly from the deck or grave. For a counter trap, we have Raid Raptor's Phantom Knight's Claw, which is definitely a mouthful. When a monster effect is activated, Claw can detach a material from a Dark Xyz monster the player controls to negate and destroy it. Then, if the detached material was a Phantom Knight, Raid Raptor, or Xyz Dragon card, Claw can boost a Raid Raptor Xyz by the original attack of the destroyed monster. To help get access to the traps of the deck, we'll round out the main deck with Trapaholic and Trap Tracks. Trapaholic targets a back row the player controls, destroys it, then sets a normal trap from the deck. If the player has 3 or more traps in the grave, it can be activated that turn. Trap Tracks targets a monster the player controls, destroys it, then sets a normal trap directly from the deck, and while it can be activated that turn as well, the player only gets 1 trap card activation for the rest of the turn. Starting off the side deck, we'll also look at Trap Trick, which banishes a normal trap from the deck, then sets another trap with the same name face down directly from the deck, but the player can only activate 1 trap card for the rest of the turn. But where are the duplicate normal traps? Why, here in the side deck with Trap Trick. We'll be adding in a spare copy of each Phantom Knight's normal trap to the side deck since they're already such an integral part of Yuto's dueling strategy. So just to confirm, 1 each of Phantom Knight's Wing, Lost Vambrace, Wrong Magnet Ring, Tomb Shield, Dark Gauntlets, Shadow Veil, Shade Brigandine, and Mist Claws are being added to the side deck as well. To help get some more monsters in the grave, the side deck will also employ Dark Grepher, who can be special summoned by discarding a high-level Dark monster. Once per turn, Dark Grepher can discard a Dark monster to send another from the deck to the grave. Up next, here's 4 more Malabranches of the Burning Abyss: Drahig, Kalkab, Alish, and Barbar, all of whom follow the same rules as the first 4 from the main deck. They blow up if the player controls a non-Burning Abyss monster, and can only use 1 of each of their listed effects each turn. The first of which being that if the player controls no back row, they can summon themselves from the hand. Drahig's Grave Effect stacks a Burning Abyss card on the top of the deck. Kalkab's Grave Effect returns another set spell or trap on the field to the hand. Alish's Grave Effect targets a face-up monster on the field and negates its effects for the turn. and Barbar's Grave effect lets it banish up to 3 other Burning Abyss monsters from the grave to burn the opponent for 300 damage for each one banished. Finally, closing out the side deck, we have the Traveler and the Burning Abyss, which can summon any number of Burning Abyss monsters from the grave that were sent there that turn in defense mode. Starting off the extra deck, we have the rank 3 Dante, Traveler of the Burning Abyss, and the rank 2 Cherubini, Ebon Angel of the Burning Abyss. Both are summoned using 2 level 3 monsters. Once per turn, Dante can detach an overlay unit to send up to 3 cards from the top of the deck to the grave, gaining 500 attack points for each. If he attacks, Dante changes to defense mode at the end of the battle phase. If Dante is sent to the grave, he can add another Burning Abyss from the grave to the hand. Monsters that Cherubini points to cannot be destroyed by card effects. If Cherubini would be destroyed by the opponent, it can send another card the player controls to the grave instead. Once per turn, Cherubini can send a level 3 monster from the deck to the grave to boost a Burning Abyss monster on the field by that monster's attack and defense points for the turn. Starting off the Phantom Knight strong, we'll look at the other Link monster in this list. The Link 3 Phantom Knights of Rusty Bardiche. Summoned using at least 2 dark monsters, during the player's main phase, Rusty Bardiche can send a Phantom Knight from the deck to the grave to set one of their back row directly from the deck. If a Dark Xyz is summoned to a zone that Bardiche points to, once per turn, it can target and destroy a card on the field. Now for the Phantom Knight Xyz monsters, we have the rank 2 Cursed Javelin, the rank 3 Break Sword, and the rank 4 Raider's Knight, which is always both a Phantom Knight and a Raid Raptor card, meaning it's compatible with Claw as mentioned earlier. Once per turn, Cursed Javelin can detach an overlay unit to target an opponent's face-up monster, change its attack to 0, and negate its effects for the turn. This becomes a quick effect if it has a Phantom Knight as material. Once per turn, Break Sword can detach a material to target and destroy 1 card on each player's field. If Break Sword is destroyed, it can summon 2 Phantom Knights with the same level from the grave, and increase their levels by 1, but the player can only summon dark monsters for the rest of the turn. Raider's Knight can detach 1 material to rank up into a Phantom Knight, Raid Raptor, or Xyz Dragon monster that's 1 rank higher or lower than itself. Taking a quick detour to Pendulum Magician territory, we have Time Star Magician, who is summoned using 2 level 4 Pendulum Magicians. Once per turn, it can detach a material to add a Dark Spellcaster from the deck, grave, or face-up extra deck to the hand. Once per turn, if a pendulum the player controls would be destroyed, Time Star can send a Spellcaster from the deck to the grave instead. Now onto Yuto's ace. Cloaked in shadows, and relentless in its objectives, here's Dark Rebellion Xyz Dragon. Summoned with any 2 level 4s, it can detach 2 materials to target a face-up opponent monster, cut its attack in half, then gain attack equal to what was lost, making this guy effectively a walking rear Yoku. Dark Rebellion has 2 rank 5 evolutions, Dark Requiem Xyz Dragon, and Arc Rebellion Xyz Dragon. If Dark Requiem has Dark Rebellion Xyz Dragon as an overlay unit, it gains 2 effects. Once per turn, it can detach a material to change an opponent's face-up monster's attack to 0, then gain attack equal to that monster's original attack. As a quick effect, when the opponent activates a monster effect, Dark Requiem can detach an overlay unit, destroy that card, then summon a Xyz from the grave. Arc Rebellion can't be destroyed by card effects while Xyz summoned on the field. By detaching material, it can gain attack points equal to the total original attack of all other monsters on the field. Then, if it has a Dark Xyz material, it can negate the effects of all other face-up monsters on the field. After resolution, Arc Rebellion is the only monster that can attack for the rest of that turn. For the last 5 cards in the extra deck, we have rank 7 Xyz Pendulum monsters, all of whom can be Pendulum summoned from the face-up extra deck if the player can Pendulum summon level 7, and all of whom can move from the Monster Zone to the Pendulum Zone if they are destroyed. First up is Odd Eyes Rebellion Dragon, summoned using 2 level 7 dragons. If it was summoned using an Xyz monster, it can destroy as many level 7 or lower monsters the opponent controls, burn them for 1000 damage for each card destroyed, and make up to 3 attacks during each battle phase that turn. If Odd Eyes Rebellion is destroyed, it can nuke the player's Pendulum Zone before sending itself there. Once per turn in the Pendulum Zone, if the player has no cards in the other, Odd Eyes Rebellion can place a pendulum from the deck into the other zone. This monster has a retrain in Odd Eyes Rebellion Dragon Overlord, who can be Xyz summoned on top of any Rebellion Xyz monster directly by transferring materials, or who can be summoned by using 2 level 7 monsters. If it was Xyz summoned using a rank 7 as material, it can make up to 3 attacks each battle phase. Rebellion Overlord's once per turn pendulum effect can summon a Rebellion or Phantom Knight's Xyz using itself as material, then attaches a card from the other pendulum zone to the newly summoned monster as well. Odd Eye's Raging Dragon, who only appeared when Yuya was sufficiently pissed off, is summoned using 2 level 7 dragons. If it's summoned using an Xyz monster as material, it can make a second attack during each battle phase, and once per turn, it can detach an Xyz material to nuke the opponent's board, gaining 200 attack for each card destroyed that way for the turn. Once per turn in the Pendulum Zone, Raging Dragon can place a pendulum from the deck in the other Pendulum Zone if it isn't occupied. Dark Anthelion Dragon is summoned using 2 level 7 monsters. Once per turn during either player's turn, it can detach a material to target an opponent's face-up monster, have its current attack points, then gain those lost points. Once per turn, Dark Anthelion Dragon's Pendulum effect can target and have an opponent's face-up monster's original attack for the turn. Finally, we have the newest version of Yuya and Yuto's combined aces, Odd Eye's Rebellion Xyz Dragon, summoned using 2 level 7 pendulums. It cannot be used as Xyz material during the turn it was summoned. By detaching a material, it can target and destroy up to 2 opponent monsters with 3000 or less attack. During the main phase, Odd Eye's Rebellion Xyz Dragon can summon itself from the Pendulum Zone, attaching a dark monster from the grave to itself as an overlay unit. And that's going to wrap things up for this Yuto character deck profile. If you'd like to hear an explanation of the cards in this list, and why certain cards were left out, keep watching. Greetings, I am Wham Bam Duel, and welcome to the explanation segment. To those new to the channel, you may have noticed that the profile segment was rather similar to the deck profiles made by Spell Commander 91. This is on purpose though, as he and I are frequent collaborators, and we decided to bring everybody more deck profiles by splitting up some of the work. So to visiting viewers, welcome, and to everybody else, welcome back. On to the deck, I already knew that the idea of using elements from other U-Boys was going to be a point of contention, so I want to make it clear here and now. Each deck profile out of Yuto, Yugo, and Yuri are going to include at least a few cards from other U-Boys, as this is meant to be profiles for each of them post-merge. Since they're capable of swapping between each other and their decks as Yuto did when Yuya was dueling Lulu and Selena, I imagine there's going to be a bit of a mixed pot for each of them. But despite doing this, I still intend on making it unique for each character without reusing cards. My first drafts of each list included a copy of regular old Odd Eye's Pendulum Dragon in each to be a piece for making the Odd Eyes merged ace monsters. But I realized they could be done with nearly any Odd Eyes monster. So for Yuto's case, I looked through the level 7 Odd Eyes Dragons and found Odd Eye's Phantom Dragon, which is obviously a better fit for Yuto's Phantom Knight's character archetype, at least in terms of aesthetics. As for the Pendulum Magicians, Black Fang is the one based on Dark Rebellion, so it makes sense to be here. Shan Shang and Shan Ke are used to make the Xyz pendulums using Dark Rebellion as material, so they also make sense here. And though Timebreaker is kind of the odd one out, it still fits as it's a level 3 dark monster like most of the Phantom Knight's archetype, and its scale of 2 makes it useful for if the player wants to pendulum summon Phantom Knight monsters. I didn't want to include too many non-dark monsters in the deck considering how it works, but Shan Shang was a necessity, and Dante is the Xyz boss of the Burning Abyss monsters, whose effect pairs really well with the Phantom Knights. Yeah, I suppose I should talk about the Burning Abyss monsters as well. I know support archetypes have already been a controversial point in this series, though I like to think that I justify them well. In Dante's case, even though he's a light monster, he's still extremely useful for setting up Phantom Knight grave effects by milling 3 on a rank 3 body, which can be made using any 2 of the level 3 Phantom Knights. And same goes for Cherubini, who can send any level 3 monster from the deck to the grave. Again, super beneficial for Phantom Knights. But if you're playing these two, why not play Tour Guide and some Burning Abyss monsters just to make them with a single card, and make full use of their effects? The playstyles just work so well together, and I think it'd do Yuto a disservice to leave them out entirely. That being said, there are a number of Burning Abyss cards not seen in this deck. Kagna's Grave Effect is only really useful in a more dedicated Burning Abyss strategy, as the two pieces of their back row that are being played in this deck don't have Grave Effects. Libic's Grave Effect might be one of the better ones, but since Yuto's not playing a full Burning Abyss package, I figured it might be more interesting to focus on some of the more utility-based Grave Effects like Farfa, Calcab, and Elish instead. Rubick is the tuner monster and doesn't have a Grave Effect. Not playing the Fusion Dante because Yuto hates fusions, and we're not playing the Ritual or Synchro monsters as they're alternative bosses that would take away from the core of the deck. Not playing Beatrice because she's banned, and even though I do occasionally give out the occasional banned card for character profiles, and she would still play really well with the rest of the deck, she's also just a step too far in another direction aesthetically speaking. Terminus is their fusion spell, and Good and Evil is their ritual spell, so those two also make sense not to be here. I do like the Burning Abyss archetype though, and if I find another character that needs them as a support archetype in the future, in a way that can fit in some other interesting cards, I'll definitely give them another look. As for the cards I borrowed from Yuya, I did set myself a few ground rules. 1. Only a single Odd Eyes Dragon monster can be brought in. Besides the necessary Shan Shang, they must all be dark monsters. And since there aren't many Performapal synergies with Phantom Knights, and Performapals would diverge completely from their aesthetics, I decided to stick to Pendulum Magician monsters. Lastly, the chosen cards cannot have any anti-synergies with Phantom Knights, so no locks or anything. So with those rules in mind, let's look at the remaining Pendulum Magicians that were left out. Dragon Caller's targeted Dragon Hate would feel kind of odd. Stargazer and Time Gazer are too iconic and specific to Yuya. Acrobatic Magician's level of 5 wouldn't give it much to do with the rank 3, 4, and 7 focus of the deck. Double Iris, Celestial Magician, and Purple Poison are meant for other characters. And Harmonizing Magician is more designed as a synchro support piece, even though it could technically still make a rank 4. It's also more Yuya related, as it's a retrain of Tuning Magician, a plot-relevant card from Season 2. Odd Eyes Phantom Dragon is clearly the best choice for Yuto in terms of level 7 Dragon Pendulums to help make the merged aces of Yuto and Yuya, but I'll look over the other level 7 Odd Eyes Pendulum monsters one last time as well. Arc Pendulum Dragon's Pendulum Effect wouldn't aid the Odd Eyes Pendulum Xyz monsters very much, even though the scale is a bit better for the deck. As mentioned earlier, I did just consider giving each U-Boy a different art of Odd Eyes and calling it a day, but I opted for more uniqueness for each deck instead. And the new Frame Break Odd Eyes retrain is going to be implemented in our Yuya character deck soon. But yeah, no Phantom Knights, Xyz Dragons, or Odd Eyes and Dark Rebellion combinations were left out. So I hope you enjoyed this Yuto character deck profile. Let me know what you think of it in the comments. Till next time, I've been Wham Bam Duel, and I'm always happy to see you.